Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick. I'm delighted to be talking with Marcus Weldon, who is the President of Bell Labs and CTO at Alcatel-Lucent. Marcus, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
You're quite welcome. Good to see you.
You have been talking recently about enabling digitization and connectivity of everything and everyone. So it's not a small ambition.
Not a small title either,
No,
is it?
it's quite a lot to say. What does that mean in terms of reality?
Yeah, it's a very interesting view we have. I think that everyone understands the idea of Internet of Things, or IoT as it's called. But we started looking at that and thinking, what is it about? So we went back and looked at the evolution of networking bandwidth over time. And it turns out if you look on a 5-year timescale, you can actually see distinct periods of bandwidth growth that on a larger timescale look like it's linear. But in fact, every 5 years, there are little peaks that appear, and then it plateaus and it peaks again. And we then associated with that phenomena that people's behavior had changed, if you like. So you think of the internet era was founded on the premise of finding digital information. And then we moved into a search era where we needed to find it more easily, and that was sort of the beginning of Google, then music sharing, video sharing, social sharing. And we've looked at what's coming next, and we said, really, all of this is building towards digitizing everything. We've digitized media and information, but if we digitize everything, every physical object gets a digital interface. Why are we doing that? It seems like a logical progression, and then we said, you know what, it's about automating everything. Automating access and control of things is the next big thing. And the goal of automation, the most interesting way to say this, is to create time. So that whole long title about digitizing, connecting everything and everyone, which sounds at the same time interesting and boring, is actually about creating time for people and for businesses. We're trying to optimize the efficiency of business processes and manufacturing processes and enterprise as they communicate and connect and collaborate between employees, but also people in their consumer or home lives. Creating time is a grand ambition, one that Bell Labs is suitably challenged to answer. But that's really what it's about. It's about creating times that people feel like they have the ability to do more in the 24 hours of the day, but in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. How
achievable is it and in what time frame?
Well, of course, since I run Bell Labs, the answer is it's achievable. No, it is achievable because, in fact, a lot of the technologies are already there. The interesting part is not that, it's not that I have trouble making a modem. I do have trouble making a modem that has the right battery life. So that's what 5G will be about.
Yeah.
It's actually getting longer lifetime modems and control planes in the network that turn things on and off and control them so that they don't communicate when they don't have to, and then optimizing who communicates when, because we're going to have to increase the scale of the network by a factor of maybe 1,000 in the control plane. Maybe 10 in the bearer, meaning the actual data you send, but maybe a factor of 1,000 or even 10,000 in the control plane. So we've got lots of things we have to do. We sort of had the technologies in hand, which is the interesting part. NFV is going to be key. That gives me the scaling of the control plane. SDN allows me to network things dynamically, so I can optimize everything all the time. We like to say, create the appearance of seemingly infinite capacity. That's what SDN will do. Cloud allows me to build those things in unique and rapidly onboarded ways, so I can create instances where I need them and then connect them with SDN. So we've got all the technology sort of in hand. I think the difficulty is bringing it all together and actually having the confidence as an industry to do this. It's really a case of us looking at this and saying, this is a place where the network providers, both equipment and service providers, have the right to play, can be successful, should invest to enable this future, even though not all the business models are clear. So I think it's a little bit about having the confidence to invest, which is going to drive this more than anything. In fact, one of the banners around here from another company whose name I won't mention, they're Swedish, is the biggest barrier to transformation is you. And it has different pictures of people. And I think that's probably right. I think it's the people part that's the barrier, not the technology part. And that means people working in service providers, it means people and vendors that have sort of, maybe there's a lack of confidence or a legacy attitude, that don't believe in a new reality, that don't believe they can benefit from this new reality, and so it's not worth the investment, and perhaps feel like they've lost a web-scale company so many times before in recent history that they can't win again. And I think that's actually the problem, is getting over that mental hump, that people hump, and then this reality can happen.
You've been talking also, Marcus, recently about 2020 network. Tell us, in essence, what that is and what that means.
So it is some of the things I talked about. It's if I break it down, I think there are 4 fundamental components to a 2020 network. There's the virtualization piece, which allows us to scale control plane in particular, because if I think about IoT and somewhere around 10 billion devices, depending on who's counting now, but 70 billion by 2020, to scale a control plane by that sort of factor of 7 is tough. Maybe it's even much more than that once everyone has Fitbits and connected light bulbs and things. So that virtualization gets me the scaling of that control plane, and being able to create it in the location I need to get the low latency I need. SDN then is the yin and yang, is the yang to the NFV yin, of allowing those instances to be networked together efficiently to create a network path and a service. So those two go together. We're also seeing at the same time the cloud moving into the network. So you could do NFV centralized, but in fact we're seeing the cloud move to the edge, partly because the needs of NFV are to have low latency and high bandwidth. When you've got a control plane function that's providing sort of critical control of the network, you can't have it too many network hops away, otherwise you actually lose the fidelity of that control. A typical example we give is vRAN, virtual RAN, has a control plane timing requirement of about 4 milliseconds. It was just built into the LTE protocol. So if I go more than 4 milliseconds away with the vRAN, I break LTE. So that normally means you have to be close. Once I'm there close, I'll also do a virtual CPE, where I take your device and every click on your remote control will be rendered locally. And other things like virtual CDN, virtual IMS, where you don't want calls to be routed sort of in tromboned ways, where they go into a call and back out when you're just calling your neighbor. So there's all sorts of reasons to be local. And so we think that's going to be a big deal. And then very high capacity access. So we say the other dimension of being local is really local access, meaning small cells and small nodes on the copper side of things. So you've got ultra high capacity access. So that with an IP and optical core that's dynamic, so I can reconfigure the transport and metro backhaul network, is sort of what we see Network 2020 being all around. And of course, being at TM Forum, I can't forget that that's the mechanics of the network in terms of the physical infrastructure, but we have to be able to onboard services and manage services and provide service assurance and service management. And so I think that's sort of the management piece of this equation that also needs to be addressed.